Have you ever heard this song? I know an old woman who swallowed a fly. I don't know why she swallowed a fly. Maybe she'll die. Anybody heard that song before? All right, that is the correct way to sing that song. And I know this because that's the way my mother taught me to sing that song. Now, there are some people, I don't want to mention any names, Sandra Faye Sherritt, that learned it the wrong way, the way that is not right. She heard it this way. I know an old woman who swallowed a fly. I don't know why she swallowed a fly. Perhaps she'll die. Doesn't even sound good. It is not the right way, definitely not right. I remember a conversation I had with a teenage girl, high school student, about the Bible and its teaching about right and wrong. And I remember that she said, I mean, it's kind of crazy that I, a pastor, would have this kind of conversation with somebody, right? But there it is. She said that she believed that what the Bible taught was right, unless it went against what she believed. She believed that what the Bible taught was right unless it went against what she believed. And I often wondered what or who informed her on what was right and what was wrong. It obviously wasn't the Bible. What informs you about what you believe is right? We all have an understanding about right and wrong. How did we get that understanding? When we read about the parable of the workers in the vineyard, we all know that's not right, right? It is not right that some people work all day long and they get the same as somebody that only worked 1 hour. That's just not right. But how did we get that understanding that that's not right? How did we get the understanding about right and wrong? How did you get it? Have you eaten from the fruit in which God told you not to eat in the garden? The fruit of the knowledge of good and evil? When I was in Kenya, Africa, they were talking, I don't know why, but they were talking about this job opening in this bank, and they all wanted a job in the bank. Seemed like a cushy job, I guess. And they all knew that the owner of the bank would do the right thing. And the right thing was to hire his relative, regardless if they had if they were qualified or not. That was, in that culture, that was the right thing to do, to hire your relative. Why would you not hire your relative? We believe that it is right to treat people equally and fairly. You work, you make so much an hour. You work many more hours, you get more pay. That might not exactly be how it works in the real world, but we believe that that is right. But then again, how do people get jobs? What is the best way to get a job? You know somebody, right? You know somebody. And if your relative has a job and they have a job opening, but we don't call it that. We call it networking, right? That's different. How do you get into college? We had that big case, right, in the news. People paying almost millions of dollars to get their kids into prestigious colleges and universities. I don't know really why they're making such a big thing about this. Is this surprising to you? The only thing that's surprising to me is how creative they are. I mean, I thought you just bought a building and you got your kid into college. I didn't know that you could pay a coach to say that you were a member of the crew team. Regardless of what happens in the real world, the idea of right and wrong, how did we get that understanding? Now let's look at the parable. If we start at the end of the parable, when the workers who worked all day complained that the landowners were making the workers that only worked 1 hour equal to them. It says, they said, "You have made the workers who only worked 1 hour equal to us, who worked all day." And Jesus says, well, the landowner says, "I choose to give to the last the same as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me?" Now, when you make a business agreement, it's not unlike playing a game, right? When you begin something, you have to know what the rules of the game are, or the rules of the business arrangement are. You have to know, how do you win, how do you lose, how do you keep score, what are the procedures, what's considered good, what's considered bad. We see in the parable that they did this. Most of the groups did this, except for the last group. The first group agreed for the usual daily wage, which would be a denarii. That's how much you needed to live on for 1 day. That's how much you made 1 day. The landowner promised the rest of the groups, except for the last group, that he would give them what was right. The landowner says, "I choose to give the last the same as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me?" We see that right is relative to what the landowner decides is right. As one might play in the playground. It's my ball, we play by my rules, or I'm going home. So when we read this parable, remember that this is a parable. The kingdom of God is like a landowner. So if this is the kingdom of God, whose ball is it? Well, you could say landowner. Who is the landowner in the kingdom of God? It's God, right? It's Jesus. Jesus said, "No one is good but God." Good and right are what God says and what God does. That's what makes something right in the kingdom of God. God decides. God doesn't answer to anyone. It's not like in our country. In our country, no one has ultimate power. We have checks. Even the president has checks and balances. Can't do whatever he wants or she wants. We are a country under the rule of law. So the rule of law is above any person, theoretically. God is under no one. Nothing. God is the boss. Adam and Eve, who ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, didn't like that. We might not like that. Maybe there are times where we like it, and there's times we don't like it. The first workers didn't like it, especially when God was gracious. They said, "You have made these workers who have only worked 1 hour equal to us, who worked all day in the scorching heat." We might say that is not fair. It's not right. It's not right in our world, obviously. But we're not talking about our world. We're talking about the kingdom of God. In the kingdom of God, if God does it, doesn't it make it right? Or are we saying, I believe what God says and does is right, unless it goes against what I believe? Well, then who has authority over God? Who has moral superiority over God? Do we think that we do? But let's just say for the sake of argument, it is not fair. It is not right. But the landowner is deciding, even though it's not right, to be gracious to those who don't deserve it. And that makes those other people mad and angry. Does that make you mad and angry? That those people only worked 1 hour, got the same? Yes, because it's not fair. Well, then we have a problem. We have a problem because our God is a God of grace. Our God is a God that gives to those who don't deserve it, giving us and others what we don't deserve. What are we going to do about it? I think we're just going to have to get used to it. Amen? Amen.